The teeth, who cares? It's teeth. They're grounded up. It's different if you're eating your whole tooth. Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Liberation Podcast. Today we'll be discussing, analyzing, and reviewing Leather and Lark by Brynne Weaver. Don't forget there's a link below to sign up for our free newsletter where you can get more information and updates about us and the podcast. For more content outside of the podcast, please check out our Instagram and TikTok at Literary Liberation and Twitter at LitLibPodcast. Mariah and I have adopted a Palestinian family that is currently still stuck in Gaza. Muhammad's neighborhood was bombed and killed 22 members of his family, leaving him responsible for his 4 younger siblings who were pulled from rubble. We have the family's GoFundMe linked in the description, and they are very close to their goal, so please donate below. I'm your co-host, Kristen. You can find me at KRXXTXN on all social media platforms.
And I'm your co-host, Mariah, and you can find me at Hungry Rye on all social media platforms.
Technically,
Now we can get into it.
So technically this is a two-parter because we did like a mini episode on Butcher and Blackbird, but we never released the full thing. We just posted clips on TikTok. So I think if you want our full review on Butcher and Blackbird, I guess that'll kind of be sprinkled into this as well, right?
Yeah, there just, for us, wasn't enough substance in the first book to really discuss it or really understand kind of where the author's like politics lay. Because if you read the book, you know.
It's not
But
much. Yeah.
and we'll get into it when we get into our spoiler free. So if you don't want any spoilers about Butcher and Blackbird or Leather and Lark, that'll be about the second half of the video or
Yes.
podcast episode.
Yeah. Okay. So you did this research about Brynne and who she is as a person and as an author. Because whenever we originally filmed like our Butcher and Blackbird, we were planning to do it as just clips, which I think we only uploaded 1 or 2 clips maybe. I wonder if you still have that full thing because you edited it.
I do. It was like a 30-minute mini
So
episode that we
if you
recorded.
guys would prefer to have that as well, let us know. Like if you tell us, we will post it on our Spotify and stuff like that. If you're like, "Oh, I want to hear specifically what you only have to say about Butcher and Blackbird," then we will definitely post that if that's what people are interested in. But if not, there are some clips on TikTok if you're interested in seeing some of the stuff we had to say. But we didn't do like it's not a full episode like how our episodes are normally structured where we talk about the author and the popularity. We just kind of just started saying our feelings about the book.
And I feel like this episode's direction is going to be pretty similar, but at least we'll have a little bit more substance to go off because we are going to be referencing the first book as well. And just like the general structure of the novels, because I think that's going to be relevant. So we'll get into it. But for Brynne, apparently she has a book that she has published with her real name that's nonfiction. And I tried my darndest to figure out what it was. I cannot find it.
So Brynne
Not that
Weaver
I was
is
going to
not
say what
her
it
real
was.
name.
No, it's her writing pseudonym because she is. I can't remember what. She has like a proper degree and a real. Not that writing. I'm going to. Before I get myself in trouble, it is a real job to be a writer. I know it is capitalism that convinces us, but she does have a job that is lucrative. This isn't just like
Her
she
only way to make
does this all day.
income.
Like she has. Yeah, so this is like a passion project for
So
her.
like similar to like
It's
Ali
not her only.
Hazelwood, where she already has a PhD and then also was writing on the side, or like Frida McFadden, where she is also already has like her degrees and like is a professor and then also writes on the side.
Yes, I would have to say. The same thing with like Madeline Miller, I think, is
Oh
the
yes,
same
yes,
way where
yes.
they don't write full time,
I feel like
which is
that
something I enjoy.
I think that is important to have people to have hobbies outside of their work and stuff like that. And not that I necessarily agree with maybe profiting off of them in different ways, but I mean, of course, like to each their own. Where like I know, like once I started like crocheting and like doing other like creative things like that, everyone's like, well, how can you make money off of this? And this is like not really relevant to like the discussion of these books or like Brynne as an author or anything like that. But it makes me like sympathize with like Frida McFadden because she releases all of her books on Kindle Unlimited where they're a lot more accessible. Where like Ali Hazelwood and Brynne Weaver, they traditionally publish them where also you can the only way you can get them is if you buy them. Where there's no like I feel like Frida McFadden makes her books very accessible, which might be why her books are, I think, way more popular.
I'd have to agree, and they seem to hit with the
General audience?
demographic of people who general audience of people who maybe don't have the income to be able to go out and buy all of these new books. I know my aunt, she waits until they're in the library, so she always puts in her request for the next newest Frida McFadden book. So
Mhm.
she's a very popular author, which
Yeah.
we'll have to cover. Which we're gonna cover another one of her books here
We
soon.
never
So
posted her one because the audio didn't record, remember? We did the first 2
you'll be
housemaids
getting a trifecta
here
of
this
all
summer.
three.
I just have to actually sit down and read more. I got 20 pages in and then stopped for, like, 2 days, so
Let's see what else about Brynne. She has 9 published works that I could find according to her website. The first book that she ever wrote was The Diviner, which came out in 2021. I think she started writing it 2019, maybe.
okay.
I have never heard of The Diviner.
Me neither.
Diviner? I
Diviner
don't know.
sounds right.
But The Butcher and Blackbird has been like the most anticipated one. We saw it because it came out. Dark romance TikTok
Blew it
gobbled it
up.
up. They love it. Regular romance TikTok, I think, also really enjoyed it because it is rom-com, so it's not, although it has horror elements to it, this is hitting like two different demographics of
This
people
is
who
like an
like these dark
introduction to dark
characters.
romance.
Yes, exactly. So her third book, Scythe and Sparrow, is anticipated to release in 2025. I don't know what month because I've seen different things.
January.
I think it
I
might be. I thought I
oh.
saw on Threads that it was gonna be February
Oh, I
now,
can
but
check
on
the
her website it
Goodreads.
said January.
I can check the Goodreads. Usually they're pretty accurate with their it just says published 2025, so but didn't you just send me where that was just the cover reveal?
That was on Threads.
Was that just the cover reveal? Or did
I
it
don't think so. I
have
thought it said in February 2025.
Oh, February 11th, 2025.
See, that one had a definitive date, and that came out after I did all the research for this.
And this is her official, like, I guess her official Threads. It's not verified, but okay, so February 11th is
Close
the
to my
date.
birthday.
Happy birthday to Mariah. But you said Brynne inspires to write female focused stories about complex, resilient, imperfect characters who struggle with anger, trauma, fear, courage, and love.
That's what she says. Now, whether that's true or not, we're gonna get into it.
Who said
Um,
something similar to that we just discussed? There was somebody that we just did an episode about, and they said like, "Oh, I tried to write my women."
Sophie Lark.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. So it's kind of I think this definitely falls into like a Sophie Lark category of books as well, where they're not necessarily all like horrible, like the worst thing you've ever read, but they're also not like definitively like good books, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not trying to yuck anyone's yum. That's your business, you know.
Feel like if people are listening to this, you probably already know about Leather and Lark. You likely read the first book, so you kind of know
Butcher and
the
Blackbird
synopsis.
took over TikTok at the beginning of this year, end of last year, because it came out in August, but I feel like I didn't really see everyone talking about it until it was a book of the month pick. I think that's how it kind of blew
For what?
up. Book of the
Like
month?
Barnes?
No, like
Oh, is
book
Book
of
of the
the
Month
month.
like its own thing?
Yeah, like you don't know, like the mail subscription where people get like this the
No, no, no. I've never heard of that.
There's like a
Like,
which we could do a mini episode on like box subscriptions and stuff. But book of the month is like the biggest one because I know like a lot of like the book talkers that I watch or like booktubers on YouTube, they're usually sponsored by book of the month and usually like you can get your first book, which is a hardback book for $5 if you do like the subscription and it's like one of those ones where you can like opt out at the end of the books. Like fits your interest, but they do like a bunch of categories where it's like Amazon first reads, but you get a physical book, I would say, and you pay for it.
interesting.
Yeah.
We'll have to
But
look into the services and like how people rate them and like the book
I
choices.
think this is the most popular one that I see, but it's just one where it's just the book. It's not like all of the extra little goodies that like Owl Crate and like Lumacrate or whatever does. It's just the book where it's book of the month. And you get like a nice special hardback special edition that says like specifically book of the month on it, like a little thing.
Cute.
I know that was the pick for like it was one of the picks for book of the month and I think usually if like a book gets put on there, it kind of because so many people have the subscription, it kind of inherently makes like the book blow up if it's a popular read. Do you know what I'm saying? Because like so many people
Yeah.
are subscribed to this service. And so I think that's one of the reasons why maybe necessarily like Butcher and Blackbird blew up, but I don't know if like Leather and Lark will end up being one of those. I don't know how they do series and things like that, but I think already because Butcher and Blackbird took, like, BOOK-TOK by storm, it kind of inherently made, like, Leather and Lark be ready to go, and I think these books are getting, like, spewed out pretty quick. I mean, the first one came out in August of last year, this one came out June of this year, next one's coming out in February of next year, like, it's not a lot of space in between these books.
Well, and the thing with these books is a lot of I think for the 3 books that are gonna be in this, like, quote, unquote, "trilogy," they're all gonna be their own standalone, so you can read them without having to read the other ones, and they can kinda
Yes.
get read in any order because of how the structure of the books are. So that's something to consider. I know there's other authors that write similarly. Ruby Dixon, off the top of my head, is one of them.
Mhm, and she's
So if
kinda
you
somebody
like that
that's
kind of book, or it doesn't like there is like a subplot going on, but not much. Like nothing like the romance is the forefront. Like that's
mhm.
what these books are.
Yeah. I think this one not so much, but I do feel like the first one was more of like a vehicle for smut to like get to where like to have like these while I feel like Leather and Lark only has like 2, like, smut scenes that I would can really recall that are, like, major. Like, one is kind of longish, where it's, like, maybe 30-ish pages, and then the epilogue is, like, just smut. That's, like, mainly that I can recall. While Butcher and Blackbird, they had, like, similar, but it was a little bit more, I think, like, more smut.
This is like the slow burn for the people that don't really know what a slow burn is. This is not like a Kristen slow burn where it's like 800 pages until they hold their hands for the first time, but it's definitely not
They aren't
straight
kissing on
out the
page
bat
1.
like
It's mere to
erotica. Yeah.
convenience, which a lot of people like, which I don't know necessarily if it was done particularly well in this instance. But I mean, if you were looking for the tropes of this, marriage of convenience, I would say almost like Grumpy Sunshine esque. I don't know if you agree
Hate
with
to
that.
love, he falls first. These are actually all the tropes that were on the banner on
Oh,
Goodreads. So it's funny that you said Grump and Sunshine because it is described by the author as Grump and Sunshine.
which I mean, like, I've never been much of a trope the only trope that'll make me want to pick up your book is found family. That's the only trope where I'm like, "Okay, this is a book I'm interested in." Anything else is just like, I could take it or leave it most of the time. Like, it's like, I don't care, you know?
You really don't have any like romance trope that you're like, yes, I'm gonna read this. Is gonna be good.
No, but I'm not much of a romance reader, really. Like,
That's true.
I've never been big into, I mean, like, I read romance because I feel like it's the most popular, like, genre on BookTok, so, of course, like, you can't go anywhere without avoiding it, which I don't think necessarily is a bad thing, but I guess the only romance trope I care about is slow burn, where it's, like, genuinely a
This
slow
is
burn. Or
not,
friends to lovers, I guess, where I
yeah,
feel
but
like
like a real slow burn like
yeah.
Anastasia by Sophie Lark.
Yes. I think, like, Six of Crows has a great slow burn subplot I like romance if it's a subplot. I think it usually is more powerful for that. I mean, I love, like, Zoya and her relationship. I guess I won't spoil it in, like, the King of Scars duology, but, like, that relationship, I think, is very powerful to me. Or, I mean, I just read Beach Read by Emily Henry, and I thought that was a beautiful romance. Like, I was crying real tears after I finished that book, which I think we could probably do an episode on because it talks a lot about misogyny and stuff like that, which Mariah doesn't read,
Maybe.
like, fluffy
I don't read
romances.
contemporary romance, like fluffy romance unless it's like a monster romance.
I don't know. This
Like
one,
I have my standards.
I think you would actually like it. It's actually really well written, and I don't think where it's written where I don't think it's only, like it is a romance book, but I don't think it is, like, necessarily only romance. Like, there's other things going on that make it more interesting. That was, like, my latest five-star read, which I think it's, like is it my first five-star for this year that's not a reread? No. It can't be, right? I have to check. Now I'm curious. Oh, well, Black Shirts and Red and Night Bitch, so no, it wasn't. Anyways, moving on, I guess, to actually talk about Leather and Lark instead of our
So,
side topics.
so far, when I was doing research on this book on Goodreads, it had 33,000 reviews and it was averaging about 4.4 stars. So, in comparison to Butcher and Blackbird, it has 201,000 reviews on Goodreads with an average of 4.13 stars. So, it's averaging about the same rating among
Oh,
readers, which I think is
less
interesting.
reviews.
So it's not necessarily better or worse.
I think me and you ended up liking this one more than Butcher and Blackbird, though.
Yes. I think
Which,
the characters are better developed. Not necessarily better, but better developed.
but do you think that's because we also had like a little bit of their backstory in the first book?
There wasn't a whole lot of backstory in the
I would argue
first
that
book.
Lark gets a lot of development within that because you learn her entire like you learn that she's a
Yeah,
musician, and
you learn
then
more about Lark,
Lachlan, I would say
but
you
other
probably
than that,
don't.
but
What?
as for reviewers, the praise was generally they like the smut. Funny enough, they like there's a quote unquote toy scene, which we'll get into with the spoilers. A lot of people said it was a slow burn, and I saw some people saying that this read was unique, and I'm sorry, you probably just don't read a lot of books because it's really not all that unique of a book.
I guess the only thing that could be unique is maybe the idea of like a contract killer and a serial killer, but it's nothing different. Like if you read her first book, it's not different.
No, not at all. Maybe if this is your first step into dark romance and you've only ever read contemporary romance, then it would be. But most people who have read a lot of dark romance or like that was all I was advertised when I first started on BOOK-TOK was dark romance books. So I read a lot of them. This in the scheme of dark romance isn't anything revolutionary.
Like if dark romance was a scale, like this being completely light and this being completely dark, I would say it would fall somewhere like middle ish.
Yeah,
Like I think it has a
I would
lot
have
of
to
like
agree.
light, like obviously it follows dark topics. And one thing that like I will criticize, which is not a spoiler, is the trigger warning page was I wrote like 3 paragraphs before I even started reading the book. Me and Mariah did a buddy read, which we usually do for any books that we're gonna do an episode on. I don't know if I can find my whole little spiel. Did you even read it?
This was I think I did see it.
Like
But so the
if
thing with Brynne Weaver and some other people, but hers specifically with her trigger pages, is they are so long, it almost feels like it's unnecessarily long to promote the book. Like
I
it's a
will
marketing
read the
tactic.
trigger warnings too, because I guess if anybody who has not read these books and is just looking for, I don't have the, hold on, let me get to the trigger warning page because I will read it. And I had a lot of complaints, which I can go into more of the complaints whenever we actually go into spoiler zone. But if anybody, like, I would say half of these are not even relevant. But if you guys want, if you're worried about any of them, these are the trigger warnings. Eyeballs, but not eye sockets, so you're welcome. Teeth and tooth byproducts. I might have ruined pizza and beer, also smoothies, still not sorry. Snow globes, auto cannibalism. Welcome to a debate you've never thought you've had. Numerous weapons and sharp objects, including darts, scissors, guns, saws, knives, grinders, an edger, and a little implement called an enunciating spoon. Severed fingers. You might have new thoughts about crafting with epoxy resin. Vehicular collisions, drowning in various forms, terminal illness of a loved one, detailed sex scenes, which include but are not limited to adult toys choking, rough sex, mild degradation, sexual acts, public pegging, praise kink, references to parental neglect and child abuse, not depicted, references to child sexual assault, not depicted, religious references slash trauma, explicit and colorful language, including a lot of blasphemy. Don't say I didn't warn you. Injured dog, cause of injury not depicted, and he's okay, I promise. There's a lot of death. It's a book about a contract killer and a serial killer falling in love. So I feel like that's probably a given. And that's exactly how, word for word, the trigger warning page, which infuriated me to no end. Just saying.
It was a lot if anyone's going into it. I don't think a lot of those are applicable like in
Actually
the
relevant.
beginning, like those the epoxy what like I those I how is that triggering? Usually it's something that triggers you is like it'll flash back to your own trauma that you have, not just
Arts
something
and
that's going to
craft.
be
It feels almost like
like a
it's making
horror.
fun of trigger warnings at that point to me, where it's just like, I mean, I'm never somebody who's ever been like, I don't think there's really anything that I've ever been like fully triggered by. I don't know about you, where it's like usually like anything that you've ever read, you've been like triggered by actually. So, I mean, like, I'm never really somebody that, like, looks at these trigger warnings like, "Oh, you know what? I'm actually not gonna read this book." Like, anytime I'll probably just sit through it because I've never been hugely affected by it, but these feel like almost as if they're making fun of people who do have genuine, like, triggers that need to be warned about. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. And it's so I don't know how to feel entirely about it. You make your own determination
Judgment.
on how you feel. Yeah, thank you. Your own judgment on trigger warnings. Is there a point where it's excessive
That was 3
or
pages of I mean, of granted, it's how zoomed in my font is, but I had to click 3 times on my
I
Kindle,
just
which
think
I
it could have been like reduced.
yes. Especially because, like, at that point too, where you're listing the triggers and then you're also putting your own thoughts in the triggers where you don't actually know how these are gonna affect people that have these triggers and things like that. And I feel like since this is maybe not necessarily a book that a lot of people with maybe necessarily like since it is more like not necessarily like I don't know anybody that's reading dark romance actually like I feel like usually there aren't people that have like trauma and things like that are not naturally drawn to like books like these, I would say.
Surprised that she didn't list claustrophobia.
Yeah, that
Of
seems
all the
like a
things that
general.
wasn't on there that was general and relevant to the story, I think claustrophobia may have been a good one
And we
to
can
have put
talk about
on
more
there,
in
and
this.
she didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to let's get into the criticisms because we got a little side
That was
railed.
that
Um,
was my criticism of the book. One of my
yeah,
main
that's
ones.
Kristen's criticism of the book is the trigger warning page. But commenters on Goodreads said that they felt like nothing really happened in the plot, which I mean I can
I
agree
can
with.
agree. Yeah.
A lot of people disliked Lark. They felt that she used Lachlan like a punching bag. The one comment that I thought that Kristen would think was quite funny was in regards to a line that was in the book. But it says from the username Kim that multiple deleter is the most idiotic term I have ever heard in my life. I should have DNF'd this thing right then and there.
I'm
And
90% sure I actually responded to that comment. Like I'm pretty sure I commented on that post.
it's like that was real.
Look, I
Some people
literally
said it was
commented on
boring.
that post.
Look at that. I see.
See?
I knew you would have commented on it.
Okay, but anyways, yes, the multiple deleter thing I was pissing me off more than anything in the world because instead of saying like a serial killer or a killer, she said she was a multiple deleter, which I guess take that what
Okay.
as you will, but you're killing people. You should have some type of tooth in your the way that you talk.
Right. Another one was huge time skips being an issue, which I did notice that it would be one page, it'd say one thing, and the next one it was like 3 or 4 weeks later, and it's like, wait, hold
You're telling me
on.
nothing relevant
Um,
happened within that time or like years later. Like the first chapter, I was so confused by.
yeah, and the same with Butcher and Blackbird, like the same kind of thing happens because it happens over such a long period of time, so it's kind of weird.
And I'm somebody where if something is happening over that long period of time, I love to experience the length and the waiting of that. Where I feel like with the time skips, you don't get to experience, which is why, like, I think like Anastasia is one of my favorite slow burn novels, where it's actually a slow burn because you experience all those years of waiting in between each one of their like meetings and impacts with the like main love interest versus these you just skip to each scene with the love interest. You don't get any time away from the love interest where you can actually feel like the longing develop, you know?
I can see that. I definitely can see that. And then
Which
the
is
last criticism was having quote unquote from Kelly Marie Matthews said having read Butcher and Blackbird, I knew to expect bad writing, awkward pacing, and leaps of logic to rival the Animaniacs, but at least B&B was entertaining. I thought that was a really solid roast.
yeah. I mean, like, we ended up rating, but I ended up rating this 3.25 stars, which sounds like a good review, I guess. But I would say it's very middle of the road. I will probably never reread this again, sort of thing. But I
Yeah,
don't know.
because you wrote or rated Butcher and Blackbird a 3 star.
Yes, and
I
we
see.
also read
And
that
then
this year.
I think I rated Butcher and Blackbird 3.25 or 3.5, and then I gave this one like a 3.75, mainly because of the epilogue. I think that was its only saving grace. If it
I don't
hadn't
even
gotten a
think
little
that was worth
funky
it.
fresh, again, there's not much. The characters are a little bit better, but not much. So I suppose we can get into the spoilers because I don't think we can. We've been
Mm,
doing our best dancing around different topics,
yes.
but
I
we
mean,
can get into the substance of it.
specifically, like, into the spoiler review again, like, half of those trigger warnings that I listed are not relevant to the book. Like, it says auto cannibalism. Is the auto cannibalism is just whenever the guy drinks the teeth smoothie with the beer and pizza,
Technically,
and that's it? So you felt the
I
whole
guess.
need to write out this whole thing about you ruining beer and pizza, which one blending them together, who gives a fuck? That's literally like I mixed up worse things in elementary schools and drank it off my tray at school, mixing my milk in my potatoes and like all of those little like things in your tray and you drink it at school. You know, like that's literally a 12-year-old would drink that, you know? Like it's not like anything that's like life-changing. The teeth, who cares? It's teeth. They're grounded up. It's different if you're eating your whole tooth, you know? It's blended into the mixture. It means nothing.
Weird. I don't know. Maybe it's because I work in healthcare. So some people are on like mechanical soft diets or like puree diets. And so a blended food with weird concoctions like that is not anything abnormal to me. So I've like had to feed people weird stuff all the time. And it's just kind of what it is. Like, I don't think it was all that crazy, except like the guy put his teeth in it.
But even then, I felt like the teeth weren't relevant because it's not like you have the chunks of teeth in it.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Mm.
If you were to put beer and pizza into a
A
blender, like
blender.
you had pulled out somebody's teeth, yeah, in a blender, and you put somebody's teeth you pulled out into the blender and you blended it up, do you think it would blend up the teeth?
Hopefully.
Would you consider that cannibalism?
Auto cannibalism if you yourself are drinking
Quote
your own
unquote
teeth.
auto cannibalism.
Because you're drinking your own teeth.
Eating teeth.
Your own teeth. This was a trigger warning in the book that we read, so I figured if I had an outside source that's
I
not.
wouldn't say so.
That's what I'm
That's what
saying.
we're confused.
That's what I'm saying
It's
this
like
whole
biting
time.
your fingernails and being
It's like biting your own
or like
fingernails.
eating your boogers. Like, oh, I'm a cannibal.
Yeah.
It is weird because
I
teeth
guess
are.
it's different because like teeth are permanent.
But they took all his teeth out.
So like if you were to eat your teeth, you don't get them back. If you like eat your fingernails, they just consistently grow. Or like,
But you're still like, eating your own butt. We're really just
What
picking
if you
apart
eat your
I
the.
don't
own
know why you would like
scabs?
eat your own teeth because
No,
It
because he
wasn't
was
his
like being
choice.
tortured by somebody and like effectively killed. But the guy who was like trying to get information out of him
wouldn't
got
that
him.
fuck the blender up though? Like, I don't think that would happen because you like teeth are stronger than glass.
Well, and half the
So
time when they go through
it
a.
would hit it, and then the blender would just fucking explode
Or like.
because it'd be like shrapnel.
Yeah, when people get like cremated and stuff, like teeth and bone, like don't.
Fully.
Yeah, they don't burn down. So I don't think a little metal spindle could blend up teeth. They would just kind of like rattle around in it.
Maybe
they'd
like a
chip 'em.
coffee grinder would have been better and powder it.
Most people
But why would you want to
like
do that?
wouldn't
I don't.
do that. They would like crush them up with like a hammer or something. And still, if you hit the tooth wrong with a hammer, it'd be like,
Yeah, teeth are really strong.
yeah, they can withstand like 800 pounds of pressure.
Anyways.
Brandon, he knows a lot about teeth. I just figured if I had a
Dental.
I
outside.
don't know a lot about teeth. I just know a lot about
Dentist.
science.
Thank you. I appreciate your input.
But
Like,
okay.
logically, they would not be able to even be blended up. So,
This was in the very beginning of the book.
well, it sounds faulty to me. It sounds like whoever wrote it didn't know anatomy at all.
Sounds
You
true
would
to
be
me.
wrong.
I'd agree.
What was the other trigger warning? The resin.
The epoxy. Because
They put
she
resin epoxy on it.
would do arts and crafts with the dead bodies and things
I
like
don't think
that.
that's a triggering thing.
I don't necessarily agree either. Like you're already killing the body. Like killing the person is the trigger warning. That's all you need. Like murder. Trigger warning. There you go. That covers the whole thing. She decides to do whatever she decides that they know that she's attempting to get rid of the body. That's it right there, you know?
But she's gotta have resin art
There's
to
your thumbs
preserve
up.
her trophies. I don't know why it keeps doing that. I'm trying to think if there's anything like storyline that was relevant aside from her being like a a muffin nepo baby.
I don't even understand. So she had like a second like, so it was like two families in Fair Verona, that were married. Like, so like she had like her and her dad, right? So it's like her mom, her dad, her and her sister, right? Her dad dies and her mom remarries, and her mom remarries to this new guy that also does something, but we don't know what he does. Like, really. He's like is in the business of contract killing, similar to like the Muffins people, but he's not related to the Muffins. He's his own family has his own things, right? But we don't know anything about that family.
Yeah, it was just
They were just like there
left
to
out. I was very
cause
confused.
like it was a very like the entirety of it, like I feel like you have to have like disbelief because you sit there and just like read it and you're just like, I don't know what the fuck is going on, and I'm gonna continue not to know what the fuck is going on and not care. And
That's
I
kind of the thing with these books is like you have to kind of be okay with being confused.
like suspending your disbelief. I mean, the timeline was very confusing, and I don't think it was properly paced because you'll spend like 30 pages of her whenever she first meets Lachlan, and then like the next scene whenever which I pretty sure this does not line up properly with the Butcher and Blackbird timeline. Like I didn't reread Butcher and Blackbird, so I can't fully quote this, but I feel like I remember after I can't remember the brother's name. I don't know if you can. Not Fionn, the other one. The one that was from Butcher and Blackbird.
Aiden?
No.
Was it started with an A?
No. I thought it was an
Rowan.
L. Rowan, yes. So Rowan opens his new restaurant, Butcher and Blackbird. Oh my god, so cute. It's the name of the book. And like for Salone, and they like have like this thing, but I feel like I remember after them opening the restaurant they have like such a successful night or whatever, then Lachlan and Lark are all over each other that night, but then you get that night's like the whole night perspective from Lark and Lachlan, and they're like, "Oh, we don't even know each other. So why are they all over each other?" But I feel like I remember in Butcher and Blackbird they were all over each other previously.
Yeah, it was weird.
So, like, I don't know if, like, the timelines fully match up, and, of course, like, I haven't reread Butcher and Blackbird, so this could just be false memories, but I feel like I remember them, and it's supposed to be sort of like an enemies to lover, but I feel like they're not really like, you need more substance for enemies, like, they weren't the beef that they had because he put her in her trunk, it's like, I get it, yes, that's upsetting, but then it's also like, do you wanna get caught fleeing a murder scene, which you could possibly get caught fleeing a murder scene in this dude's car?
It was kind of unwarranted. And like his whole thing was he was mad at himself for losing the contract,
Well, he
I
was
guess.
upset because Fiona was almost gonna move home, but then some girl showed up, and then he had to leave, so he couldn't keep bothering Fiona with moving back home, and so he was upset
It
that
was
he got
kind of
called
just
to do the
silly.
job. It's just like teen drama. Like it's not like these people have actual issues. Like I would argue Lark does have actual issues before either of these books take place. I mean, so sexually assaulted by one of her teachers, which is like it's mentioned in here, but it's like not depicted. So it acts like it's not relevant, but like it's very active in her trauma and the reason why like Lark is the way she is. But the fact that they don't even like touch on that really in the trigger warnings, while you're like, oh my god, I ruined beer and pizza and teeth. Please.
I think that's why like these books just like don't hit the mark. And there is a point where I had made a comment on our little story graph buddy read where Brynne Weaver will write these characters, and I haven't read her other books, but the first one and then this one where the characters get together, and then it felt like the author didn't know what to do with them.
Yeah, like they're like together and it's like, okay, now we're happily ever after the end. But it's like you still have this whole phantom plot needs to be wrapped up, which you get like at the end of the first Butcher and Blackbird, you get like this guy's perspective that's like, I can't wait to kill Rowan's brother because he killed my brother, blah blah blah. And then you get this perspective to I feel like it's only inserted into the book just to move the plot along because they don't have anything to move the plot along. So you get this guy's perspective where he's like, I can't wait to kill Lachlan and Lark. I hate them so much because their families killed my family, blah blah blah. So I'm gonna kill their family. And then Mariah was apparently pretty shocked by the twist that it was this creepy dude that showed up halfway through the book whenever I felt like it was obvious that
I thought it was too obvious. I was like, there's no way. There's no way it's just gonna be this like weird dude wearing a cowboy hat, comes in, is acted funny. It's like that it seemed like a red herring. I was like, there's no way, this is too obvious. And it was. And I was like, well, that was really lame.
well, I think maybe I mean, of course, again, this is just based off of me and Mariah have only read Brynne Weaver's these 2 books. So it's not like you can make a whole we can't make a full assumption over everything she's ever written of her whole what is it called? Like bibliography or something, whatever.
Yeah.
We can't do that, but based on reading these 2 books, I feel like they're very lackluster books and they're not anything that I couldn't have thought of myself. Which I mean, props to you for you, Braden Weaver, coming out with that and making money and profiting off of that in your own way. Like that's great for you, but I don't feel like it's anything life changing or worth
Like
really
if you're an avid reader, this is not anything that I think is
stick
maybe
your
worth
neck out.
investing.
No. Which I don't think I would ever I mean, we're probably gonna read the 3rd one just because, I am very much a completionist where I like to even if I'm hating something, I will stick it through the end, which is why I am, a chronic non-DNFer for anything that I read, which is my own choice, my own I'm living with it. I will finish books that I hate. That's for me to live with. So I probably will finish this series, but it's not like I am in any dire need to have the next book to know what's going to happen. Even though I would argue this ends on a cliffhanger, which I feel like the cliffhanger is just going to get resolved in the first 60
Well,
pages of
even
the
then, I
second one.
feel we have more insight on Fionn and Rose
Rose.
as characters because they've been in all 3 books and they're intriguing. Their backstory, I'm curious like how it all plays out. So I want to read that more than I wanted to read this one. I have a
Mhm.
feeling it's gonna be much better, but I still don't know how it's all gonna like
Wrap up.
wrap up.
Well, because
Like what makes it a trilogy.
Because, the idea is this is obviously spoilers for, this book and the first one, is that, because the first book has, Abe being mentioned where he gets that final chapter where you're kinda like, "Ooh, spooky, I wonder what's gonna happen in the next book," and then that gets entirely resolved by the end of this book. The only thing is that Rose gets shot and allegedly dies, but I think with Fionn being a doctor or whatever, he's probably gonna end up reviving her, I would assume. But if she actually kills off Rose, I think that'd be pretty metal, and I'd actually support that decision. I love when characters get killed off in books.
Dude, I would pog if that actually ended up happening.
But I just the way that all of these situations have been written, way Butcher and Blackbird ended, the way this ended, it's giving she's going to be revived before the end of the book.
Yeah,
Which I mean,
unfortunately.
if you are all for the happy endings, that's your business. I prefer a little bit more ambiguous or like not so happy ending, you know? Like those are all usually my favorite books are books that are not necessarily perfect endings. I think they're more fun, more exciting.
But there's not much substance. Like now that we've gone through, we kind of discussed some of it. I don't really have any other thoughts on it. Like
There's
I
no
feel
way
like
to
the
have a real Marxist critique on either of these books or this series, unfortunately, because it doesn't go much into the politics of even people getting you would think a story about a serial killer or people that are murdering and causing crimes would maybe talk more about the justice system within the United States or anything like that. But it doesn't even because at least in Sophie Lark's, it does mention the police are useless and things like that. But in here, you get virtually no mention of the police.
it it's almost like Twilight where it's so like apolitically like the direction of it that you can kind of just enjoy it for what it is and you can't really extract anything else. Like it's a head empty kind of a
Hmm.
piece of literature to consume. So if you literally want nothing of substance, of real magnitude in a book, this is a perfect book for you.
And sometimes that's all you need to read. After you read some heavy books, it's always nice to have no thoughts go into a book. But I think that doesn't necessarily make for good books or books that I'm interested in reading. But yeah, I don't know. Do we have any other thoughts?
I don't. thanks for listening. We
Mhm.
appreciate it. Hopefully the audio is better on this.
We're trying a new system for the audio, so let us know. But other than that, thank you and good night.